I'm just hopeful. I'm just wishful thinking.
Make a deal.
It's live right now.
The guy got a lead.
Yep.
What's live?
Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
You know what I'm wondering? Does it make sense to go live so early? Because then if someone wants to watch it, they have to watch 3 minutes of nothing. So they're not on YouTube. Oh, okay. Not on Facebook.
You need
So
one
there's a
minute?
Facebook. I tried to get one, and then I
can
had to
always-
wait for 3 minutes.
I'm Sam the intern.
Hi, Sam John.
Sam Darrington for the John's former assistant chief of New Haven. Hey, John, what's the phrase that makes your buddies at the bar mad? Expert in what?
Policing expert.
Policing expert? Because
Yeah.
I know whether to call you criminal justice or policing expert.
Yeah, policing expert.
Paul, do you need any help in here?
No, we're good for this one. Except I got the wrong list of questions. Does he have, well, he needs to, why don't you do some,
I'll do the codes.
I think I might be too complicated, but I think it goes back Okay, so it's policing expert, not law enforcement.
What do you say? What do you usually say?
I've used different
Resident
ones. I just want to know when it's
expert
a man.
policing?
Paul, could you hand me that computer?
Computer.
Right next to you.
We had to talk about Norman Boone a little first.
Who?
Norman Boone.
I have Norman Boone on the list. Could we start with advice for Campbell?
Yeah, sure.
I promise. And if I forget Boone, remind me. But I promise.
Well, I only said it because I saw you had a piece of Paco was talking about.
He talks about how the guy just needed more opportunities. He was in every freaking program.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I think his
The
report
example
should
was
have been
dishonest.
corrections.
The example was dishonest. There was going to be some people where the programs don't help. If you go back to the life and kill somebody,
Yeah.
you weren't saved by a program.
True. Very true.
Yeah.
Point taken.
Is this comfortable for you?
That's good.
I can make sure it's not away the camera. That's all I'm worried about. Oh, that's perfect. Cool. Just tell me when you want to start.
Facebook, okay.
Right now?
Not yet, not yet. Give it like till it goes to 11.
Cool.
Yeah, resident. What do you say? Resident
Policing expert, okay.
I like that.
I'll say it as much as we can. Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Hey, Sam?
Yep.
He's having trouble with his headphones. Can you help him out?
Oh.
But if you're hearing us back home, listen in because we're ticking with a new police chief in New Haven named Anthony Campbell. What challenges will he face and how will he tackle them?
Hmm.
Well, John Velleca, WNHH Radio's resident policing expert, has sat in the new chief's shoes. And John's here in the WNHH studio to talk about that. John is a retired assistant chief of the New Haven Police Department. He served a stint as acting chief, so he's run the department. Today he works as Sergeant at Arms for the Connecticut State Senate. This is a truly thankless task. And he's going to be filling us in with advice for the police chief and more. Hold on a second. Hey, Harry? John Velleca, welcome to the studio and thanks for coming in.
It's always a pleasure, Paul.
Sorry, we've had a couple of
Technical
few
difficulties.
difficulties this morning, but I think we're going to be okay now. It looks like we're ready to roll. So, a couple weeks ago, you were on the show. You're a regular policing expert here at WNHH Radio. And you told us that you thought that Mayor Tony Harp should pick Anthony Campbell to be the new chief of police of New Haven.
Right.
And then she did it. So, do we have you to thank for a new chief?
No, I doubt that.
He actually had a lot of people pulling for him.
Yeah.
People thought he was the right choice for the new chief. He was sworn in private before, and then he's going to be sworn in public on June 20th. Do you have any thoughts about swearing in someone in private like that? Do you know why they wanted to do it twice? Or?
No, they do that sometimes just because, from what I understood, it was the assistant chiefs had some vacation plans that were already.
So why not pick a date when they weren't on the vacation? Why'd it have to be June 20th?
You know, I think too that once.
That's why it just didn't make sense. I don't think it's a big deal, but I don't. It just the explanation didn't make sense because they were always saying they would do a private one that day. Then they said they wouldn't. Then they said, well, the assistant chiefs are going to be away, so we're going to do a private swearing in and then a public one in weeks. If you need them sworn in at first, why do you need to?
I think it was important that when they made the announcement. We've been going through this now for what, 6 months, 7 months now. I think once the announcement was made, we all knew it was going to be the chief. I think it was incumbent upon the mayor to make that official and swear the chief in.
So why not invite the public?
Well, I think that, they probably planned a larger ceremony and probably wanted to line up some different speakers. Anthony probably line up his family and things like that. So that takes a little while.
So why did you need to do it right away? Because what's the difference legally if the person is sworn in or not?
Well, the thing is, it looks, I'm not really of this opinion. I think that once you become the acting or the interim chief, you could begin to make decisions, personnel movement, things like that as soon as you get there. But I think that what's been going on over at the PD is that they're kind of in a holding pattern until somebody's actually made. And I think that swearing Anthony in and giving him the official title now cuts back on that lag time. I mean, he can start making moves and he can start doing the things he wants to do right away instead of still being in that holding pattern, that interim mode,
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we got a new chief, somebody a lot of people, including yourself, are pulling for.
Right.
He's got some big challenges ahead of them.
Sure.
What do you see as some of those major challenges he has?
Well, I think, across the country, police chiefs in general, their biggest challenge rather, is restoring the credibility of the police department, rebuilding that trust that's been, fractured over the last few years. But I think specifically for New Haven, for Anthony Campbell, he's going to, the one thing that I really picked up on when I became assistant chief and then acting chief was that it's a heavily political town, and you have to do a lot as the chief of police to try and balance those politics and remain apolitical in your organization, right?
So meanwhile, you got to deal with the politics,
right? Because
you have all 30 alders who nothing's more important to their constituents than
30
policing.
30 aggressive alders.
So then you got to make them happy. But then there was a feeling under the last chief who had a keen political radar that there was too much pandering to alders. Now, some people would say it's not pandering. Alders are in touch with what people in their neighborhoods want, so maybe it's responding to grassroots. But in other cases, it's making people happy or influential. We also saw that with ministers coming in every month. So on the one hand, you say it's so important to be reaching people who speak for people in the community, who can talk to people in the community when problems arise, who can get the community's concerns to you. On the other hand, I know that I keep hearing the word politics. It's such an ill-defined word, John.
Right.
But as you say, it's a major challenge.
Sure.
So people love James Lewis, who was the acting chief, because he didn't come from here a bunch of years ago. So he said, screw the politics, I'm just doing good policing. If someone yells at me who's influential, I'll listen to him and be polite. If I don't agree, get lost. If the mayor says you got to do that, I'll say, I'm always going to listen to you, but I'm going to do my job right. And other people say that's not how it works long term in a town if you want this place to run well. So how do you navigate that?
Well, there is a fine line here in New Haven. Like I said, I've said to you 100 times, that when you get to that position here in New Haven, you can't hide. Okay, so if you're not confident or you can't do the job, you will be exposed. It's a balancing act. It's by design, it's a political appointment to chief of police. However, you're in charge of an apolitical agency. So you do have to draw that line, and absolutely your alders are going to bring concerns of their constituents to your attention, problem areas, what they would like to see happening in their neighborhood. That's the essence of community policing, right? Pull your community in, ask them
and the
what
ministers,
we need to do, right? And then we do that. But you cross a line when you start to talk about personnel decisions, when you start talking about,
whether people in the East Shore want to make sure they have a white sergeant, and you end up giving them a Latino sergeant they don't like, so then you pull them.
Sure.
That's a tough one, though. You say, well, if a community is racist, do you give them someone they're not going to get along with? Do you force them to become not racist, or how does it work?
I think that as the chief, you have 10 policing districts, and each one carries their own set of challenges with regard to law enforcement or policing or public safety or community interaction. And if you're a good chief of police, which Anthony I believe will be, he'll know each district and what the challenges there are. And the thing is to put the round pegs in round holes, put a person in that area that is strong where that area is deficient. right? So I don't necessarily think
So
that.
maybe you try to explain, well, if people are upset if something's politically unpopular, but if it's important to do, you do it.
Right. Well, and the other end of this too is let's not forget that if you have an alder and he's lobbying for a specific police officer to work in their area, and he's lobbying very hard for that. As the chief of police, I got to be honest with you, I would probably stray away from that, only because I'm not sure.
You want to make sure the officer is able to do an independent job.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's an improper relationship. I don't know if this is an alder that's going to manipulate my supervisor.
If you were the chief, would you have transferred with federal crews out of the East Shore District?
I don't want to talk about personnel decisions in specific, and I don't really know the details with regard to that. But I think that if you transfer somebody out of that position, it should be based on their inability to do the job or their ability to do the job in another place at a higher level.
Well, John Velleca has done the job of running the New Haven Police Department. Right now, he is back in the studio where he often is, the WNHH Radio, is our resident policing expert. And we're talking about the new police chief in New Haven, Anthony Campbell. What advice John has for him. So here's another challenge that's facing the chief, John. And I love thinking about these kind of challenges because they get to the core of how does government work. And we're talking about the wire, and so much of what happens in the police department is similar to what happens in school boards, bureaucracies, in government. How do you make good decisions? Now, we have civil service in American government, including police department. And that has rules that are kind of strict about when you can hire and promote and who you can put where. And it's trying to find a way to pick people away from political influence.
Right.
But on the other hand, sometimes it ties the hands of a manager who sincerely believes someone will be better for a job, but under the rules can't promote him. So Chief Campbell has that right now. They just promoted a lot of lieutenants.
Right.
They took a test, and some people did well on the test, some people didn't. Now, by well, I mean scoring high enough to be promoted. They're going to be able to make like 10 to 12 lieutenants. So before this test, we had a bunch of sergeants in charge of neighborhood community policing districts.
Right.
Now, ideally, we're supposed to have lieutenants, and there are good reasons for that, including cost reasons when you have to have certain coverage around city for other positions and whether you can have lieutenant or sergeant free. So we have a policy lieutenants should run the districts, but we didn't have enough lieutenants before this test. So we had a bunch of sergeants. Now, as it turned out, some of these sergeants turned out to be great neighborhood district managers. The neighborhoods loved them. They tackled some crime problems. In a short time, they built trust. But these tests, which are called scientific, but there's no such thing as a scientific test,
Right.
did not rank them high enough to be promoted. So now, like I'm thinking of people like Sean Marr, just a few months downtown. I mean,
Great,
downtown
great,
love him,
great
and they love him because he's done a good job.
Yeah,
He's like a
great
no-nonsense
police officer,
guy.
Sean Marr, yeah.
Roy Davis out on the
Roy
East
Davis
Shore
as
has
well,
gotten
yeah.
a lot of people's. Shafiq Abdul-Sabor in New Hallville. I mean, crime's really down there, and they're doing interesting work. Sergeant Wolczewski's doing 2 districts. He's filling in for someone who's off in Beaver Hill and Westville. People are from there. So in any case, now because those people are not going to be promoted to lieutenant because of a civil service test, which has very good aims, addresses an important government problem, which is favoritism that it wants to root out. Now you're the new police chief, John, and you have to make a decision where you can't put putatively the best person in those positions or someone who's done some important work in building trust. How do you deal with that challenge?
Well, that's if you're asking me. I mean, to be honest with you, there's no problem here. That's a lieutenant's position. It's always been slated as a lieutenant's position. We came to the number of lieutenants that we have in the police department based upon the 10 district community policing system. Each one is supposed to be run by a lieutenant and maintains the structure.
Right, we have more than 10 lieutenants because there are other jobs too, and
Right,
some
there are
people
other
aren't
jobs.
cut out or to be aren't as instant lieutenant.
Right.
You might want to run the records room or
So, and listen, I know Roy Davis, I know Sean Marr, Shafiq, great job. They do a great job. They're great cops. I'm not going to tell you that they're not. Okay, but there are also lieutenants who can do that job as well as they're doing that job, and they carry the rank of lieutenant.
So how do you deal with someone who's an up-and-comer, like let's say a Davis or a Marr, Abdul-Sabur? They have a lot of energy, positive energy. They're just starting to get things going in that neighborhood, and as you say, you can't put them in that job anymore.
Right.
What do you do with them?
What you do is you obviously they're a round peg and a round hole, like we just said in the DM job, but usually the officers that show proficiency in those areas are proficient in many areas of the job. So we could find another position where would be just as important, so to speak, and they could thrive just as much as they would as a district manager.
What do you
But
tell
we
that
can't
neighborhood?
break down the structure of the entire police department because we want certain people in certain positions. If you remember, we had this back before the corruption scandal, right? And then and what was the thing?
There you talk about this was around 2007.
2005, 2006, we started putting sergeants into these positions, right? And we have lieutenants answering to sergeants, captains answering to lieutenants. Cliff came in and said that makes no sense whatsoever.
That was the outside
Lieutenant
agency
grade,
analyzing
right?
except for 2007 corruption arrests.
Listen,
led to
you can't
changes.
break, this is, when we say paramilitary organization, this is what I used to say at the management team meetings. We don't talk about that because we want to roll tanks onto the green. We simply mean that it's a structured organization with a tiered ranking system, so there is direct reporting up the ladder. When you start to pull runs away from the ladder and push them into certain areas, people forget who they're answering to. If their sergeant is a district manager, do they answer to the lieutenant or do they answer to the sergeant?
So it's
now,
important to have rules. Let's stick with the rules, but still find creative
Right.
ways to harness the
So-
energy of people.
So now I think, you have an officer who doesn't know really who he's supposed to be reporting to. He's got his sergeant, but he sees a lieutenant telling him to do something that conflicts with his sergeant, but the lieutenant ranks on the sergeant. So now what does the officer do? We ended up with everybody doing what they wanted to do, which led to misconduct, and misconduct led to corruption. And that's why the structure is in place. That's why it needs to be adhered to. It's not a slight on the officers who didn't make lieutenant. There's still great cops. They're going to be great cops. The reality of the situation is, though, it's a lieutenant's position. I could give you example. There are so many different examples of why that needs to be a lieutenant's position. One would be simply, we have more sergeants than we have lieutenants because there are more sergeants' duties, right? There are more positions at front desk or the shift
Or
commander.
like overnight, you're charging 1/3 of the city, right, for patrol, that kind of thing.
So now, if you put a sergeant in a district manager's position, well, the responsibility of the position where he came from doesn't evaporate. It needs to be filled. It needs to be filled on an overtime basis by a sergeant. Sometimes it's usually the sergeant that was taken out of that position who just.
Because if you don't have enough other sergeant positions filled,
Right,
we're
you
paying
have to
extra in
fill.
overtime.
Now, here's the dynamic that I see. Now, I was never a district manager, but I was the shift commander. So don't forget that you're running in the police department two parallel operations. You're running the shift, which is the shift commander, which is the 9/11 response, your patrol units, right? Your walking beats, and then you're running the district. The district managers are each independently running their district. So now, here's an example. If I'm a sergeant and I have a priority beat in my area, that's whatever you want to put. Or like, so they say Kimberly Square. For years, that was a priority beat, right? Probably still is. I'm a sergeant in that area, okay? Now, my sergeant, district manager, he goes home at 6 o'clock. But he says to the guys, listen, this is a priority beat. You're not to be moved. But guess what? As the shift commander at 10:30, I don't care what that sergeant just said. I need bodies because I have book offs. I have people that I'm not going to fill. I'm going to take that priority beat and I'm going to move it into a car so I could save money on overtime. So if you don't have a lateral lieutenant, you don't have another lieutenant who could call the lieutenant who's a shift commander and say, hey, listen, John, I need that beat over there, right? Sergeant can't do that. The sergeant doesn't have the rank to do it, doesn't have the authority to do that, right? So now you get into, this whole, where's the hierarchy? Where's the structure? Who's in charge? What are the rules, And I'll give you an example. Go all the way back to and I hate to keep referencing, but the Billy White job.
You're talking about the corruption scandal in 2007. FBI came and arrested people, and we had an outside AC help us reform the department.
Right. The chief at the time was notorious for politicking, so to speak, like we always said. But to his credit, I was in internal affairs at the time. We had begun to receive a lot of complaints about the narcotics unit. The chief went to transfer the lieutenant from the narcotics unit. Politics got involved. He made his way back to the narcotics unit, and you see where we ended up.
Well, we're ending up now is on WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. We're talking about advice from the new police chief, and we will get to a couple of topics on your agenda. And we have John Velleca, former New Haven Assistant Police Chief, current Sergeant at Arms at the Connecticut State Senate, and the WNHH resident policing expert. So, John, another big challenge for the new police chief is recruiting.
Right.
So we have cops who work so hard right now. Sergeant Monique Colon is in charge. I've seen other cops do this too.
Another good
And in
cop.
fact, Chief Campbell, before he's chief, who worked on this, they work so hard to try to get the word out that you want New Haven people to apply for police jobs. You want Black and Latino people. You want women. You want gays and lesbians. And then, despite all this effort, and right now we're getting them to go on the management teams, doing social media. Despite all this effort, we're ending up, it seems like, with some of our recent class, with a whiter, male, more suburban police force than ever. Why is that happening? What can the new chief do about it?
Geez, that's a tough one. I know that, my entire career, the New Haven Police Department was far above other police departments with outreach work within the community. There's no doubt about that. I really don't know. I mean, I can't tell you what he's going to have to be creative in some way, shape, or form. I know we get a lot of good candidates from the inner city.
And that's not to put down the white male suburban people who come. I think it's a
Right.
great job. Matter of fact, we just mentioned some district managers who
Yeah.
are good, but there is a consensus that we want a police force that
Yeah, I
is
think-
more reflective of our community.
I think too, though. I think that sometimes, and not just people, not kids who come from the inner city, albeit whatever their color. But there's a different dynamic in the inner city where these kids are exposed to certain things at a younger age, where they commit violations when they're teenagers, and they carry throughout. I think maybe we need to revise what we're washing people out on. In other words, there are
Like
some
saying,
things.
well, so, you know, shocked me today. There's a story about that in the New York Times about all these departments face that. Some departments are allowing people in if they've smoked crack.
Yeah, that's a little.
That
that's a
seemed
little bit-
extreme
that's a
to
little
me.
off the deep
What do you
end,
think,
yeah.
Harry Jones? Would you take someone who made a mistake and smoked crack before and make them a cop?
That's a hard one, but maybe if they showed years of rehabilitation.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm such a priss about crack. I just feel like there's something different about cocaine in general from pot. I mean, because I think we all agree, if I'm not mistaken, that the mayor's right and others that we should not kick someone off the force if they smoked pot a year ago or something.
I agree with that. I agree with
What do you think, Harry?
Yeah, I'm fine with it, but
But not crack.
crack would be hard for me. But I still think that you have to give a chance for somebody to rehabilitate themselves. So let's say they were 10 years clean and they showed a strong work history or something,
Yeah.
then you have to give somebody a chance. I don't want to not give people chances.
So we wouldn't have had Barack Obama as president or Republican and Democratic judges alike and presidents if we said someone who's never smoked pot or even tried cocaine
Yeah,
could have those
Obama.
jobs. I mean, George Bush and Barack
And
Obama.
Obama.
Yeah,
Obama
I know.
has
And that kind of surprised me. He was very upfront about it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of a prude. I don't know, but
You know, I think that I don't think you're a prude, and I think that that's the traditional way of thinking. I just think that.
why do I think pot's different? That's also against the law. Harry
I
always
think
says the
that
law's the
pot's
law.
different as
But
well.
it seems like
to be
everyone's
honest.
done pot. I feel like we all kind of believe
I
consensus
certainly
it shouldn't be
can't,
illegal.
even though we're talking about that's a whole nother discussion. What's scheduled, what's illegal, what's not. I certainly don't group marijuana in with heroin and crack or
Yeah.
cocaine. I certainly don't.
Now, what
or
about-
prescription painkillers for that matter?
Now,
to be honest.
and opioids
Right.
are the big challenge facing all police chiefs too. We're talking about new police chiefs,
Yeah,
Andy Campbell's challenges. The New York Times just reported that the leading cause of death in America for people under 50 is opioid addiction. Now, New Haven, it hasn't been the shock the way it is the rest of Connecticut or the country because we had heroin and it wasn't as new a thing, but it's still happening. And you
Sure.
see the zombies in District 1 they're dealing with, especially, and then the Hill District 4. I mean, that's not District 4, it's District 3, is it? Anyway, they, what are they gonna, what would you do as the chief to deal with the opioid addiction?
Well, the only to me, I think you have to. That is, we started doing that in narcotics too. That to deal with the opioid addiction, that's kind of a medical issue. We have to up our game as far as our treatment of that. But I think we need to get stronger with our diversion programs. In other words, partner with the DEA, which is what they have
What's a diversion program?
Well, diversion means that there are legitimate drugs being produced and, somewhere along the transit to legitimate pharmacies, portions of that
And then
supply
that
gets
leads to
diverted to the
fentanyl and
black
oils.
market.
So we've read about, there's a program in Seattle that New Haven is talking about bringing here. We sent a delegation out, we're doing community meetings about now, where it's a diversion program,
Mhm.
where the cops work with the courts, but also social service agencies, where if your addiction to opioids or other drugs is leading you to commit crimes like robbery or prostitution, your first time in, you're going to have the choice of avoiding jail, but the court's going to moderate what you do, and you go to programs where you're closely monitored, and they say this has succeeded in cutting recidivism. Harry, you kind of shaking your head. You don't like these programs or what?
I do like the programs. I know people are gonna get in those types of programs. They're gonna get lost in the cracks, and people who are real criminals are somehow gonna get pardoned in those things. But
I think that's inevitable everywhere.
I think it's inevitable.
It's gonna
But
happen.
with the opioid thing, I think we have to go after the big companies. We
But
have to-
fentanyl's coming from China.
Then we have to
And then about
restrict
the
it.
black web, the dark
Yeah, I
web.
know the dark
And that's
web.
where
and
now where the opioids are coming.
there's some things we can't control.
Well, I was reading this morning. So Burlington and Seattle are doing what you guys just said, and with the program they want to bring here for diversion. Another program that was very interesting to me that they're doing in Burlington is it's actually police work. When someone dies of an addiction, or dies of an overdose, opiates, or just is arrested from having a hard time, or gets a diversion program, they're tracing the source of the drugs. So they're actually doing intelligence work on where they're coming from to try to get to the source.
Right, that's a diversion investigation.
Okay, so that's kind of
Find
what you're talking
find the
about.
source and find out where that supply chain is going wrong, where we're branching off to the black market.
Now, John Velleca, our resident policing expert on WNHH, you said the last time you were here that one of the big challenges for Anthony Campbell, and you were hoping he would be named chief, and he has been, is how to deal with body cams. Now, cops are all going to have body cams as of later this year, I think. I know that our application went in for June 30th to be reimbursed for them. And one thing you talked about was dealing with video that shows cops seeming to act wrong and being able to explain it quick to the public. There's another issue that Stanford study has been revealing, which is they took $35,000 utterances by officers in dealing with public shown on body cams. So now you have this new batch of footage. They looked in the Oakland Police Department. And what they did is they got a team of linguists, computer scientists, and psychologists, the cooperation of the Oakland Police, Harry's laughing, to analyze all this body cam video and look at 35,000 utterances that were captured of police with citizens. And they put a score about how they're dealing with the public. So if they said something like, all right, my man, do me a favor, keep your hands on the steering wheel real quick, that's given a negative respect score, when they stop someone for driving, because they say he was dressed informally and the directive was with the hands. If they say, in other cases, they would say, sorry to stop you. My name's Officer so-and-so with the police department. Here's what I want to do, and here's why I'm doing it. They got a positive of a score saying this is a nice, respectful way of dealing with people.
Right.
They found that white motorists were 57% more likely to have heard the respectful statements, while black motorists were 61% more likely to have heard the disrespectful. Right. And that these body cams are being used as a tool to try to train the department to be more respectful of people and to have race.
Right, to address officer department.
Is that something the new chief should look into?
Well, I can tell you from working in internal affairs, that probably, in north of 90% of our complaints was deportment, roadside deportment, how you're speaking with people. Just a caveat to that, I mean, Oakland PD has been a notoriously stigmatized department with regard to their deportment, how they treat people, just as far as daily interactions.
For instance, having like prostitutes that having sex with everybody on the force.
So it's kind of like they went kind of grabbed the worst department.
They're kind of brutal. That's what led to the start of the Black Panthers.
And listen, and you can have that. You can have that. Police officers are human, and I think it's a good thing that when you can pull that body camera video rather, and use that for training purposes, because when you're just saying, hey, my man, already put your hands on the steering wheel. I've said that. I've probably said that 100 times, and I never viewed that negatively. And I don't remember ever being on.
It's funny when I read that didn't sound negative to me either, because my man is almost like a friendly greeting.
Yeah,
but I think their point is in the other case they're identifying themselves and explaining what they're doing.
Right. There should be.
And we know there's more disrespectful, like get your hands on the thing. It's different from hey, my man, help me out do that. That's different from like hey. Blah blah blah.
I think what they're giving a good rating to is the way you're specifically.
So you think the new chief should explore maybe with some Yale linguists, computer scientists, and psychologists to look at the body cam?
What I think he should do, and he's probably going to do. I'm probably not enlightening him at all today, but I think what they do is they should look at the body cameras, and they should spend a lot of time reviewing them just to see what the culture of the police department is. Now we are talking about our police department. We've been going the past decade, a lot of changes, right? We've had some ups, we've had some downs, we've had some ups, we've had some downs. So, that culture of the New Haven PD is probably not the same as it was 10 years ago. So he probably needs to get a look at that and see exactly what is going on out there.
Harry, you were shaking your head. You don't like this whole idea about how cops should talk to people?
No, well, I don't know. I'm just thinking everything is so PC these days, right?
Yeah, but has that become a blanket not to look at respect? I mean, you really think it's not true? You really think it's not true that cops could be more respectful and that there is a racial difference?
A racial difference? I don't know. I've been told to put my hands on the wheel too.
And you're Latino.
And I didn't think to myself, what a racist.
But you've talked to me about how you were stopped. You said you've been stopped and you didn't need to because you're Latino.
Yeah, and
so it's true.
And I still have
Because I've
I
never.
still have respect for the police, though.
That's different. That's talking about how to deal with it. I think
know,
you're right.
and-
It's important that if you.
And if we're gonna do that, I have a very good idea. See, instead of the siren, we should have the ice cream truck song. This way, when they're getting pulled over, they feel good about the situation. They have thoughts of when they were a child eating ice cream. That's what I mean. It gets to the point of ridiculousness.
But it also gets ridiculous how often people are stopped, more often because they're black, for pretext traffic stops.
Well,
And they're not always dealt respectfully. And why aren't you taking that seriously? Why do you have to use the word PC rather than to say there is a way to treat people better and it's going to have a better
I agree with
outcome for
that.
everybody?
I agree with that. Let's treat people better. But you see the difference. You're going to have some people who take, hey, my man, put your hands on the wheel. That's disrespectful. So at that point, I'm saying now we're getting to the ridiculousness and saying, oh, well, now we have to learn how to, oh, God.
But there is, I see that, because I felt the way you did too, but there is a difference between identifying yourself as a cop, explaining what you do and why you're doing it, right?
That I prefer, because I've been pulled over and asked them, why did you pull me over? And not gotten an answer immediately. They take your license, go back to the car, and they come back and then they tell you. I would like, I would like some more respect from everybody, but there's idiots in everyday life, right? And you're going to find that in policemen.
Sure.
Now, so do I think he could have done, when I've been pulled over and they don't immediately tell me why I got pulled over, do I think they could have done a better job? Yes.
Well, there is another aspect of explaining it. I was just reading this book by James Foreman Jr. It's a great book called Locking Up Our Own. He's a Yale professor who's the son of a civil rights leader, James Foreman, of SNCC in the 60s, and he also used to be a public defender for years in Washington. The main point of the book is that the black community doesn't realize it was the black community that asked for these draconian drug laws that now they want to overturn, and that he looks at the roots of that. But he talked about, and again, Eric Holder, when he was the U.S. attorney in Washington, started this idea of pretext stops, traffic stops. And, I've been at the New Haven Police Department, John, where, as you know, cops get praised for being, quote, proactive. I don't say aggressive anymore. If they say, here's a pretext I can stop someone who looks suspicious for me in a tough neighborhood, I can get them for their tail light, the tint of their windows, but what they're really looking for is a way to angle in to search the car and find stuff. So, and a lot of times we celebrate. I've written articles celebrating the cops who kind of know these guys are up to something, so they're going to stop them. And then they say, can I search? And what Foreman found is that 90% of the time, people don't realize they have the rights. They're not thinking about it, feel intimidating. So let them search when they shouldn't. So we highlight, and I'm guilty of this as a reporter, and the police, when we get some dangerous, we highlight that a cop used that initiative and got a dangerous gun off the street or some drugs. But what Foreman found out is that at a very small percentage of time, do you actually find something. And that disproportionately black people are stopped and it wrecks their lives. He tells the story of one woman who grew up in a tough neighborhood, who was a mother who was really doing everything right and had a new job, a 30-day probationary period. They stopped her in a pretext policing. They found a little bit of marijuana. And as a result of that, she couldn't be hired for her job on the 30-day window, even though they wanted to hire her because it was a big company and it was the only chance to get out of poverty. And that you magnify that by so many times that his argument in the book is that pretext policing is not good initiative. That even though once in 1,000 times or 500 you get that dangerous gun off the street, you're actually criminalizing all those people you don't want to criminalize, and you're creating bigger problems to address the root causes of crime. Do you think that's true?
I think you can see both sides of that, to be honest with you. I see that, and I do know the importance of pretextual stops, not necessarily on a mother who's driving. We would use pretextual stops when we pretty much knew who we were dealing with, and there was no other
it's like
way.
You've got intelligence that Joe is running a lot of heroin. So when you see Joe driving around, you want to stop Joe.
That's a good point. So say we're working in narcotics, and we sit there and the phone rings. And they say, hey, Harry Droz, he's driving back. He's got a trunk full of drugs.
And his 9, yeah.
Hangs the phone up, So there's not a whole lot I can do with an anonymous call like that,
But that's an example. But in other cases, you actually have, and the New York Police Department, I believe, has quite good intelligence. So I could think no one would disagree that when you have good intelligence,
right? But
you want to watch the guy. But this is done on a mass scale, and there's a neighborhood, and it mostly catches people who are not.
Right, but that's what I mean. I can see the use for a pretextual stop in that regard when, it's imminent. We have to make a move now. We don't have enough to stop them based on the drug complaint, but the officer gets behind them, sees that the tail is cracked. That's a different story. Now, if you're posting up in the neighborhoods and you're stopping everybody pretextually just simply because you're just on a fishing expedition and you're using motor vehicle violations to further your efforts, I think that that's wrong. You know, I think that, listen, all we're talking about is you have to acknowledge that there's racism in society. I'm not going to tell you it's rampant in police work. I don't think it is rampant, but I think it exists, and I think that profiling happens. It happens all the time. So how do you combat
And
that?
sometimes profiling is a good idea. You want to profile, if you know that in a certain neighborhood you never see white people in BMWs coming in the middle of the ghetto where a lot of drugs are being sold.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm being honest with you. I'm not so sure if I agree with profiling on any level, but I could tell you this: you're sitting in.
But
there
you draw up a
with-
profile of a likely attacker. Isn't that how police
Well,
work?
that's a little bit of a different story.
I always
sure.
thought that the profiling work, because I'm against racial profiling just in general, like all black people or all Latino people. But I think that the debate then
So if there's a
quashed
crime,
an important
you know, if
tactic
there's
that
a-
law enforcement uses of intelligent,
well,
non-racist
if
profiling.
there's a crime, right, and there's somebody's described, and this person fits the description, not so much a profile as it is somebody fitting the description, but if they're saying that, there's a, Winchester Avenue, there's a 6-foot black male, he's out there and we think he's robbing people. I mean, really, what can you do with that? You can't really do too much, but I think that it's inappropriate to go out there and stop everybody that looks like that.
Yeah.
And that could be a good example of profiling.
Pretext stops, this is a classic case of how police get buffeted on both sides from a neighborhood. I'm thinking of New Hallville. So in New Hallville, you get urgent cries. You're letting people shoot, deal drugs. Crack down, man. So then you're getting that on the one side. On the other hand, you get urgent cries that are equally valid, sometimes from the same people.
Yeah.
Why are you stopping everybody? I want to be able to drive down my street
Well, that was
without being stopped. And I think those are legitimate on both sides, and that's part of Foreman's book about the more complicated roots of our over-police society.
we had this conversation in 2008, right? What was different? Remember, you said to me, what's different, John, about the TNU than the narcotics
That
unit
night, yeah.
before? And our answer was simple. We had done an investigation. By the time we got out into the community, we knew who we were looking for. We didn't arbitrarily stop people, because I do think that that's profiling. You just go out there and just stop people, and you hope that you get the treasure on one person. And that's
an core
good police
excuse
work.
from good police work, and I guess it comes down to intelligence.
Right.
Part of that comes from having trust in the community, gives you good
intelligence.
information, and part of it has to do with sophisticated police work in concert
But
with
where do
other
but
law
where do you get
enforcement
your
agencies.
intelligence? Where is the primary source of your intelligence? From your community
Right.
policing officer or the people in the community. A lot of the times, the officers that I brought into narcotics with me were B cops, good B cops, new people in their area.
And we always hear that
Right.
some of the best information comes to because that's combined with pretty sophisticated surveillance techniques once you get that invitation.
Yeah.
And through Project
But if
Longevity,
you go back
the
to
city cops and the federal cops are working together, law enforcement working together on that.
absolutely, you go back to talking about profiling and things like that, and officer deportment. I can remember whether you're a lieutenant, assistant chief, you could sit back and you say, geez, so and so did this. I would have never thought that. I wish I had known earlier that he was doing this. I could have corrected this behavior and we wouldn't be where we are. Well, now you have the body cameras. You can be in that first intervention stage, and you can correct a potentially great officer who simply makes a mistake early on in his career. It could be a change in this person's career for the rest of their life. I think that they have a lot of good use with regard to training issues, to be honest.
We have a lot of good use to have John Velleca repeatedly visiting the WNHH studios here on Dateline New Haven as our resident policing expert. John's here as we have a new police chief taking office. Harry Drost, our station manager, is also in the studio. John, thanks for coming in. I want to switch gears for a minute before we say goodbye. And that was a case you worked on when you used to be at the New Haven Police Department.
Right.
Involved a fellow named Norman Boone.
Yeah.
Now this is like a softball for Harry Drost to hit out of the park. Norman Boone was a guy as a teenager who was involved with gangs.
Yeah.
And we have a very good program called the Street Outreach Program in New Haven, where we hire people who used to be in the life and gone straight to work with people we've identified as being in the life and trying to get them to go straight with people they might respect. And I would say it has been successful. It's part of several efforts that I think have really helped cut violence in New Haven. We're down 75% over 5 years from the high point. But Norman was in the program. We wrote an article on how great he's doing. He gets out of the program, and then according to you guys, he went and killed somebody. And then he didn't, and we'll get back to this in a second, the state dropped the charges. And now, 2 weekends ago, he's standing on Dickerman Street in the daytime. Some guys come up in a car, shoot him dead, and drive away. What did you think when you heard that story?
Harry or me?
Either of you.
Well, you know, like Tony Reyes and I talk about this all the time. You know, we were saying Black Lives Matter before it became, you know, before it was on a T-shirt. We believe that has always been a bit of a double standard. In other words, the level of evidentiary value placed on these cases when it involves inner city kids in the life is astronomical.
So what are you saying is that the state, if it's a white person gets killed, the state will take one eyewitness piece of evidence and go with the prosecution.
That's my personal
Whereas
opinion,
if it's a black
my
kid from the
experience.
life, they'll just say, you gotta do better, you need a higher bar of evidence.
I think what at that point, I'm not going to say now because we have a new state's attorney, we have new people over there. I think at that point they're much more concerned about winning cases instead of prosecuting people they believe were guilty.
Let's fill people in the part you're not mentioning. So when Norman Boone finished the street outreach program, supposedly went straight, he got back into
Right.
life. There was a murder.
Yep.
You guys had an eyewitness to murder who said it was Norman Boone.
Right.
You arrested him.
Right.
Then the state's attorney, and I happened to be in court that day, the state attorney is now retired, actually made an unusual appearance himself in court rather than the people usually as prosecuting. He says to the judge, we can't prosecute this case. The evidence isn't strong enough. We told the police not to bring the case, and they let him go.
Right.
And I think he had another shooting after that, if I'm not mistaken, that he was arrested for.
He was arrested that day as when we found him, and I made the decision to bypass the state's attorney. He was found as he was trying to flee the state with a gun on him.
But I mean, is that after he got loose on this one, he then committed another shooting, if I'm not mistaken?
I'm not sure about that, to be honest
Okay,
with
pretty sure. In any
you.
case,
He may have.
so you were upset, John, because
Right.
at the time you were in charge, I believe, of the Detective Bureau, right? And you
Yep.
had worked on this case, and you said, well, you just said now, how can the state, they don't care because there's just some black guy who was killed,
Right.
to press the charges. But can I give you the other side of the coin?
Sure, go ahead.
What's wrong with the state's attorney saying we want to push you guys to have better evidence? That maybe rather than going with not enough evidence in their view against the black guy,
Right.
but going with it for the white victim, maybe they should have the same standard in the white cases and say, given the unreliable of eyewitness testimony in all cases,
Right.
we want to set the bar higher and push you guys in the police department to do a better job investigating.
They could if that's what they're doing, but that's not what they were doing. That's the problem. And the reality of the situation is this. And I'll say every time I'm asked about this, they say the same thing. We got to a point where it was about wins and losses, not about justice and not about prosecuting people that they believe have committed a crime.
But we have a system of law. I'm just being devil's advocate. I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
really taking their side or your side.
Right.
They would say we have a system of law. So what it means when we want wins is it means we want to have real evidence. That we don't want to be locking up people that we think did it,
Right.
who we think did it, but we can't prove it because that's the whole point of our system. And that some people do go to
Absolutely.
jail for crimes they didn't commit.
Right, and I absolutely agree with that. I do. And after doing that, you know, for 10 years, at every level, from detective up to assistant chief of, or chief of detective, assistant chief of police, I could tell you that an eyewitness, you know, we had an eyewitness testimony, okay? But we also had some physical evidence. in
Oh,
the
you did?
case,
Okay, they
right?
claimed
We
that all
had-
they had was the eyewitness.
We had some supportive evidence of the eyewitness testimony, which put things in perspective to me. It wasn't a circumstantially based case, in other words. It was a strong case in our opinion.
So they felt if they brought this eyewitness to the stand, because usually the people who are the eyewitnesses are compromised themselves.
That was the issue.
And I know I'd be a terrible eyewitness, because often the people in life too who are
Right.
looking to break for themselves. I also know from my own experience I'm a terrible eyewitness.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't remember what I see well. But are you saying that you had enough there and they just didn't care enough because of who the victim was?
I personally believe that there is a double standard imposed at that time. I really, in my heart, feel that way. And I think that if these kids in the inner city who can't pick the phone up and call a prominent politician to put pressure on the state's attorney's office, I believe that the bar is lower. I just, from my experience and looking at him and putting these cases
The bar is
out there-
lower when a white person gets
Okay, listen, what other murder have we investigated like Susan Jovan?
right. Well, that's without a
Let's
question.
be
Or
honest
even
here.
Mitch Doobie, who's a white guy who got killed in New Hallville.
Right.
All the stops were filled. There's no question. So with the answer
But at
again,
the end of the day is this.
but what's wrong with raising the bar for everybody so we also don't get the wrong people arrested?
Listen, I'm okay with raising the bar as high as you need it. Believe me when I tell you. I think that if somebody goes to jail, they should obviously be guilty. Then, you know, the last thing a detective wants is somebody to go to jail who's innocent. But in this case, like I said, after doing this job for so many years, I truly, in my heart, believed he was the person responsible for killing.
And that's
Sean
frustrating for
Lewis
you
Jr.
guys. You work so hard, you're dealing with no snitching. So you felt like here, Norman Boone got off when he killed somebody, and then he's still in the life, and now we have another murder, and
So-
he gets killed.
So now
Rather than being in jail.
obviously,
But let me
Norman-
give Miss Ducey. Miss
Okay.
Doobie was a white guy who was
Yeah,
killed.
yeah.
They pulled out all the stops, but even there, they arrested someone on eyewitness evidence.
Right.
And the state prosecuted, because as you point out, if it's a white victim, there's pressure on him to do it. But the guy got off, and then he committed another shooting. He had a politically prominent backing in the black community.
much weaker case.
Oh,
Much weaker case.
that's interesting. So Norman Boone, you had the strong case they didn't prosecute.
The eyewitness.
So this
to
is
the
proof
Norman
of your
Boone
point.
case-
This is proof of your point. So you had the black victim there. They didn't care as much. They said, we're not just going to make an arrest. They're saying you need to do better. White victim, Mitch Doobie, they had a guy who they all believed did it. And they had much less evidence going, and they lost the case.
Right.
And then the guy went out and shot somebody else
Listen, I
after
know
his
that- I
family
know
said
both-
he's a good
I know
boy.
both of these cases very well. All right, there was an extreme amount of pressure from Mitchell Doobie. Okay, and it was from the inception of that job, it was not as cut and dry as it was the inception of the Vashon
And with
Lewis
Mitch Doobie,
job.
the question was not whether the guy was there with the gun, but whether he or the other guy pulled the trigger. So
Right.
the eyewitness becomes someone who might have been protecting himself by saying the other guy pulled the trigger.
Right. So, and
Whereas in the
other
Norman
thing with the
Boone, what
Norman-
was the issue with the eyewitness?
The issue with the eyewitness was, first, the eyewitness is literally a matter of 2 feet from Norman Boone when he does the shooting. 2 feet. He's with the victim, Norman Boone, and the eyewitness. There's only 3 people present. What changed was the state's attorney, we had gotten information that there was another gun on the scene, and that was being carried by the witness and or the victim, one or the other. What happened was everything was fine until we asked him to produce the gun. It took a few different times. He finally produces the gun, and in return, the state's attorney says, well, he's not credible because he was hiding the gun. Well, of course he's going to hide the gun. I mean, let's be honest here. What kind of world are we living in? You know, if he was going to turn the gun over, he would have done it that day. He's obviously scared. But our point was that, listen, it lends to the credibility that we've gotten to this person. He trusts us, right? And now he's being truthful. He went out when he didn't need to, brought the gun back to us, right?
And why did he do it?
Because we asked him to.
And
We asked
what was in it for him?
Nothing. Not a thing. Not a thing.
So what was your conclusion from all this about Black Lives Matter? What went through your head
I think
2 Saturdays ago when you saw that Norman Boone was killed?
What I shook my head, and I'll tell you directly that my personal opinion. Now these are all my opinion. The criminal justice, we prosecute people for 2 different things: for punitive measure and rehabilitative measure. Norman Boone. Now listen, Vashon Lewis Jr. is dead. Nothing's going to bring him back. Okay.
Wait, who's that?
Vashon Lewis Jr. is a victim, right?
How do you spell that name?
V-A-S-H-U-N Lewis, L-E-W-I-S. So Norman Boone, most people will go, listen, people come back, right? Nobody goes to prison forever, not a lot of people anyways. So why is it that we don't prosecute Norman Boone? We give the family of Vashon Lewis closure. He serves a time in jail for the punitive aspect of his offense. And maybe during that time, we give him the opportunity to rehabilitate himself. And maybe he does come back and be a street outreach worker and gets to these kids and prevents more violence.
So you're saying you wish you could have locked up Norman Boone for what you believe was a murder because it might have saved his life?
I think that if we put Norman Boone in jail, he would have at least had a chance to change his life instead of ending up how he ended up. That's my personal opinion. And I believe that, wholeheartedly believe that.
Wow. So a different take on Black Lives Matter. Now, where else could you hear that kind of insight into what's really going on in policing than on WNHH radio, where we have resident policing expert John Velleca come in regularly here to run down the latest news, and Harry, your station manager,
Well, and it
keeping him
sounds
honest.
like the law is the law, like you said, until politics gets involved.
That's true. Say it again.
All right. Well, what I'm going to say again is thank you very much for joining us in Dateline New Haven. Thanks to our guest, John Velleca. I love when you come in. I learned
love
so
being
much,
here.
man. And we're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. Now, we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book your flight with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.
That wasn't bad, right?
That was awesome, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Norman Boone Boone stuff is powerful.
What's that?
Norman Boone stuff is powerful.
And Mike Darrington is probably throwing darts at the John Velleca picture again. He might have stopped for a little while. He's getting tonight.
So Harry, how do